Welcome to Charmed Life, a radio show discussing spirituality, magic, and the unconditional love of the universe. Thanks for tuning in. And I am your host, Tricia Carr. Welcome to today's episode. I'm so excited to open up this space with you to talk about something that has become really relevant in my life. This last week especially, isn't that how it always goes? Isn't that how a synchronistic life flows? And so I welcome you. I hope that you will find this information, what I'm going to share on karmic friendships and karmic relationships, and a little bit about soul group relationships too. I hope that you will find it helpful, and welcome, because you joining your light, your attention, your awareness to this program, however you are listening or watching, is actually co-creating it with me. So thank you so much for your contribution. And may I remind you that you can catch this weekly every Sunday at 11 a.m. Pacific as a live stream on YouTube, youtube.com/Tricia Carr, where you'll also find some other offerings I put up there, like meditations and other teaching, as well as my podcast. You can find it as a podcast on any podcast outlet you could find it. We're also on iHeartRadio and Spotify. Just search for Charmed Life with Tricia Carr. And I would like to welcome you to subscribe, to share, to like it, or leave a review or comment. You can actually review on the actual podcast. I would love it if this blesses you in any way. If you would just give me a little nudge in that direction, it will help me to continue the podcast and also help others to find it. So thank you so much for that. And I have a couple of things to tell you about as I get into the material today. One thing is that Crystal Anne Compton, my gorgeous, my lovely, luminous friend, Crystal Anne Compton, who's the founder of the Lightworkers Lab, she and we have opened registration for our Mediumship Intensive. This is a 6-week program, an intensive program to walk you through opening your mediumship abilities. Now, this is about multi-dimensional mediumship. So what I mean about that is that it is definitely, we're going to be teaching on connecting with past loved ones or past humans, but also communicating with spirits of all different kinds, angels, and also beings in all of the light dimensions. So that may be cosmic star beings or the ETs, archangels, and all of the benevolent beings of light in our multidimensional universe. And so this is basically an extension of telepathic communication, but with all of the non-physical realms. And how this can shift your life, I can't even begin to tell you in a 50-minute podcast, because that's what it has done for me. I actually started with my animal communication gift opening up after having my spiritual awakening or my metaphysical opening. And directly after that, along with the animal communication with telepathy with actually incarnated animals, I also started to communicate with animals on the other side, so mediumship with animals. And then the next thing was studying mediumship with my former teacher and now friend, Hillary Michaels. And then it just went on and on and on. And then eventually, channeling opened up. And that's kind of the process, I think, is to go from setting up your personal development, usually your empathic nature, your sensitive nature, starting your meditation and your own personal devotional practice. And then if it interests you to connect with specific beings in the non-physical realm, then mediumship would be kind of the next step. And then you may actually get into that more powerful alignment if you were interested in that art of channeling. So I do welcome you to go check it out if this tickles you in any way. And if you are already a medium, we're going to be going deep. So it would be an opportunity for you to also expand your already existing practice and your abilities. You'll find the link to read all about it and register. It will be starting in about 5 weeks from the time that this episode of this podcast is actually published. It will be starting in about 5 weeks, and so the link is in the description, however you're listening or watching. And I'll just tell you, it is learn.lightworkerslab.com/2019MI. It's, again, going to be co-taught by myself and Crystal Anne Compton. So do go check it out. I would love to have you. Also, I want to tell you about my upcoming classes for my Mystic Arts Academy, and that is my individual classes, the Intuitive Mediumship Development class. This is an ongoing twice per month class. Upcoming classes will include focusing on how to do energy scans, one about connecting with archangels, and in this we also do an induction where I lead you in a guided journey, a guided meditation to induce us into the intuitive state. and those who are interested in practicing their abilities may do so. But if you are not one who wants to practice your abilities at this time, then you can just be a part of the whole program. And you can just, I say, you could just lurk if you want to lurk. But you can ask questions, of course, too. It's a really beautiful fellowship as well. Okay. Now, having said that, oh, by the way, you can find that on my website, triciacarcharm.com, under Work With Me, and you'll find Mystic Arts Academy right there. Okay, let's talk about it. I have entitled this episode, which is a solo episode if you haven't noticed yet, I've entitled it Karmic Friendships, and you may actually want to say a little parenthetical ex-friendships and karmic friends. And also we'll talk a little bit about what the distinction is there, or the similarities and differences with that and the soul group relationships. So in order to really start to talk about this, to dig into this topic, let's just talk about what karma is. What is karma? Well, the most important thing I think to associate with karma is that it is an opportunity to grow. It's a growth opportunity to learn. And so let's just say when there's an opportunity to learn or grow, usually there's some discomfort, right? So if there's a little bit of, doesn't have to be so far as suffering, but maybe a little, or maybe there are gradations to what we consider discomfort or suffering. But when there are the challenging, difficult, or kind of those opportunities where we could be shifting the energy from something that is seeming like it's not flowing, so it could be maybe when you feel blocked, but it's usually where there's a lot of that kind of resonance, rather dissonance, some powerful kind of challenge to some degree. That's when you might be experiencing some karma. Because what karma is, generally speaking, people consider it to be is based on the law, the universal law of cause and effect. The law of cause and effect. Now, sometimes people will say karma, I think because of the famous song, what goes around comes around. That to me sounds punitive, and that's, in my experience, truly not what karma is about, because really only people punish people. That's happening between us. It really doesn't even happen in nature in that way. There's no judgment in nature. And in the broader perspective of the universe, there is no judgment in the universe. Again, the broader perspective, because in that broader perspective, in that expanded point of view, all is one. There's only one energy. So there is no way to punish, because there are not two. There's not one against the other. But right here in our little middle plane here of that human stuff that we do, yeah, we punish one another. We're talking about something that is more on the soul level. So since we're talking about the soul level, there is no punishment. There is no judgment in the universe. But there is cause and effect. Indeed, there is, because we have free will, and we are here to experience how we actually create and how we are capable of manipulating energy. And when I say manipulate, there's really not a better word for it, even though we tend to associate the word manipulate with negativity, like, this person is manipulating me, they're tricking me, or, making me do something that I don't want to do. But manipulate really just means to form something. So manipulating energy is what we're here to learn about, taking one form of energy and changing it into another form. That's the whole deal. So when it comes to karma, we are taking one form of energy, which is the opportunity to learn or grow, or we may say something that is painful, difficult, challenging, or even causes suffering, and learn from it and allow it to actually serve us, to dig into it and see that there's actually nourishment there, and then allow it to become something that is a strength. But what is indicative here is of it being cause and effect means that you somehow have participation in it being there. So that's how people think it's punishment, or it's called, I did all of this and now I'm experiencing the backlash of it. But it doesn't always have to mean that you did something that was really negative. It could be something that was like, for a lack of better words, sin of omission, in some way that you just have been not growing yet. And so there's some lack of awareness in a particular area. And it could be how you actually have what you chose to experience in a pre-birth perspective. So from that pre-incarnation perspective, you were conscious and aware, because you are conscious awareness, and you always have been, and eternally in all time, and in all directions of time, because time is also an illusion, right? You actually selected circumstances and you selected potentials for you to experience. So you selected your family. You selected your mom and your dad. I remember this really cute story I heard Dr. Wayne Dyer tell once, where he was with I think he said she was 9 years old, his 9-year-old daughter. He had like a billion kids. I think he had like 8 kids or something. But his 9-year-old was really mad at him, and she was, sassing him. And he said to her, he's like, wow, you must be really mad at yourself right now. And she's like, what do you mean? And he's like, yeah, you must be really mad at yourself because, you picked me. And she was like, what do you mean? He's like, yeah, you picked me. You picked me to be your dad before you decided to become here, person on earth. You picked me to be your dad. And she looked at him and she was like, I picked you? And he's like, yeah. And she says, Mommy too? And he's like, yeah, that's true. And then she took a beat and she said, well, I must have been in a hurry. She did not want to own that karmic decision that she made, especially not in the moment where she had an opportunity to learn because she was having difficulty with that sweet father of hers. All right, so as far as karma is concerned, there are basic philosophies that say that it's something that holds actions that will affect us somehow later. So we're taking some kind of actions and it's going to affect us later. Or maybe we have not taken action. We had inaction. It's going to affect us later. Some think of it as just the karma that is happening that we create in this life, the ways that we've created action or inaction that will then be unfolding. We'll learn from it later or not, or we can ignore it and we can repeat it, right? And then also, as I'm saying, from that pre-birth perspective, because you selected that family and all of the potentials. I mean, you could see what they had already been doing, so you can guess what they could be doing later and how you would be engaging in that and the lessons you could learn. And then people often think about it as in the past life experiences. But again, with the perspective that I talk about with past lives, it's also there because time is an illusion. We can actually awaken even further and recognize that we have parallel lives and we also have future lives that we can connect with. And so all of that is happening at once, and that can kind of make us go, you know what I mean? Like, wait, how could I even? But we're really here to take that information a little bit at a time and allow it to serve us in this particular experience. So presence is really important through all of it, of course. So again, the most important thing to think about with karma is it is an opportunity to grow. And that can be sometimes challenging to focus upon when you're in pain, when your heart is broken. And that's often what happens in those karmic relationships. And so this karma and the relationships that we have that are karmic relationships is built upon shadow aspects, is one way you could think about it. So rather than thinking, one way to think about it is actions that you've taken that will affect you later or inaction, but also it is just shadow aspects. So your shadow, again, as a reminder, is that part of your full subconscious mind that has now become unconscious, because we take something that is once illumined in our life, and because we're afraid of it, this is something that especially we do as we're a child, as we're building the ego, we're building the personality, building our mental body, and something that is threatening to us because we feel that we will be rejected by having that part in our awareness, because our parents or social group or whoever keeps us healthy and alive. And we believe that we're going to be harmed if we hold that in our awareness. And so this known that we've created, a brand new known, we actually choose to put it away in the shadow. We put it away in a place that we can't see it, so that it's not logical, but so we think we won't be able to activate it if we hide it from ourselves. But the truth is, it's not hidden. It isn't hidden. It's actually there, and it's just simmering, right? It's like thinking, oh, I don't like this trash. I don't like this rotting apple, so I'll just put it in the back of the closet. Well, it's going to create more of a problem if we put it away. It's not out of sight, out of mind. It goes out of sight, but it becomes more present in the nose now, doesn't it? It's going to start stinking, and you're going to attract some other critters along with it. So this is what that shadow is. It's something that we're really always unpacking for this entire life, and we build it, and we create it mostly between the ages of 1 and 8, and then also there's a pertinent time up to age 14, and then we kind of start like moving through things. But all of the stuff from that is kind of typically based upon all of those knowns that we created and put away in part of the shadow or the unconscious mind, and then also partly the subconscious mind, which is not quite the shadow, but it's all there. So that's all a part of our vibration. And so those things that we've really shoved down in there, either things that we've witnessed that we're afraid of, or things that we have done that we're afraid of, or things that we are afraid to learn about, they're there still holding a frequency. And that powerful frequency that we are not bringing out into the light will then be experienced by someone else who also has a like frequency. It could be something that is a similar kind of pain, or it could be the counterpart to your pain. So if you have some kind of experience that makes you want to be codependent or deeply passive, then you'll find someone who has a problem with being narcissistic and dominant and arrogant and domineering and maybe even abusive. You see, these are two sides of the same coin. And when it's really powerful, then it tends to be fitting into that sort of karmic experience. And the reason I'll just take a moment in my explanation to say that I was inspired to make this program in two ways. First of all, there was a sort of two precognitive events, meaning like before an event fell in a really obvious way in my life this week. I had two events that clued me into what was about to unfold, actually prepared me for it. That's what's happening with the kind of psychic precognition. Is because we're already so sensitive and plugged into the subtle energy field, and then you start to get whiffs of what's happening, and that awareness and openness to the subtle energy, which is a great reason why to open your intuitive abilities or be deeply in touch with your intuition, because then you get a gentle easing into the different challenges. Well, the most recent, before the actual event that kind of solidified my inspiration here, was the last episode that I did of Charmed Life. And just a brief moment, I had on the show Christina Lene and also Olivia Ray. Oh, they rhymed. I didn't even realize it. And Christina actually brought up the fact that she brought up just in the middle of a conversation that she had a karmic ex-best friend. And it wasn't the point of what she was talking about, but I interrupted her because it's like, I have one of those too. And then Olivia said, I have one of those too. And we took a moment aside to just talk about it. And part of the reason I interrupted her to talk about that was because a couple of nights before that, I had a dream about said karmic ex-best friend. And also in that dream was another ex-best friend, but it wasn't that other ex-best friend wasn't like we had some kind of dramatic breakup, or there wasn't really pain in the relationship, but there was, interestingly, there was some karma there as well. And so I'm going to talk about, both of those relationships as I'm explaining this. So I had those two things happen, the dream and then the mention of the karmic friends. And then I had an event that was really challenging that happened just, over the previous couple of days. And that event was between myself and a dear, dear friend. And of course, I'm not going to divulge anyone's identity because that's not the point. This is my experience, and there's no blame here. There's no one's done anything negative anyway. Everyone's just being themselves and learning. But I had a painful experience, and I thought that it was actually breaking the relationship. And, spoiler alert, it actually didn't. It made our relationship stronger. So that's some of the stuff that can happen with these karmic experiences, karmic relationships. And upon that, what was actually the center of what went on between us was an example of someone else who is like a famous person. And I realized that famous person actually was holding a kind of karmic space for other people. So allow me to move forward then and talk to you about what some of these, I'll tell you about the famous person, and I'll tell you about the different things that are going on. But suffice it to say, yesterday I was in meditation with Jesus, crying and saying, what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do about this? Because I don't want to lose this relationship. I don't want to lose this friendship, but I don't know what else to do. And what the advice that I got from Jesus for this particular time was that it was an opportunity to show who I am. And in that, I would be a mirror for my friend too, because me being who I am will show her who she is in our relationship. And so it can just bring light. It's an offering of light, at least. And it also was an opportunity for me to exhibit some boundaries. So these are different things that can happen in karmic situations. All right, so as an opportunity to grow, we have these shadow aspects that are there to be released, and to they're calling a deepened awareness. We attract karmic friendships, karmic relationships, we'll just say friendships, upon that shared frequencies of the growth opportunity. So the things that maybe we have tucked away in the shadow, like I say, it has a resonant frequency. And so this other person has that as well, whether it's seemingly opposite, the other side of the coin, or the matching thing, so that the two energies coming together will make it really powerful and cause us to pay attention to it. And so in karmic friendships, or karmic relationships in general, kind of the basic choices are that we grow, each of us, both of us, we will grow, or one will grow as much as possible, and then that frequency will no longer be resonant with them. So you will just no longer be in a relationship. Those are kind of the common themes. But there is a third option, and that is that you can actually rebuild the relationship upon different frequencies. So if you actually move through that, which is the karma for you, then you may actually your relationship could just shift, and new things will happen. And I think this is really good news for a lot of reasons, because of what I was just saying. I didn't want to lose that friend, and I was begging Jesus Christ, how do I keep this friend? And sometimes, and it usually typically means doing the thing that is hard, because that is the growth opportunity. That's the prescription for it. But the other reason why this is good news is because these karmic relationships could be with anyone. I'm talking about friendships so far, but they could be with parents, children, spouses. And so really, if you think about it, there's kind of karma in all of those really important relationships. So that's where we talk about the soul group. In the soul group, your family of all kind, whether it's, if you are adopted, both your biological and your adoptive family would be your soul group. If you have been married more than one time, both of those spouses are in your soul group. All of those really important relationships, they were a part of that time that you actually made your pre-birth plan. But you can have some there's obviously opportunities to grow in all of those relationships. You could call that karma. I'm kind of like talking about when it's really intense. When I'm bringing the word karma into it, just think about it as a more intense difficulty, challenge, or more intense opportunity to grow. And so there are times when your child can be that really intense relationship, right? Or your parent. And so the good news is that you can actually move through the karma, whether you actually work through your part of the karma and learn from it, and then your relationship can shift. In which case, let's say if it were parent and child, if you were the parent and you worked through your part of the karma and the child is still sort of in that experience, and this could be, moving on through their adulthood, then maybe your opportunity in relationship to the karma they're still working through is for you to hold space, unconditional love, which is a different kind of lesson to learn. And I know that's a particularly difficult one. A really graceful lesson for parents to learn is at some point when your child is an adult that you have to be the parent of an adult and let them run their own life. And so I think that could be the shifting that moves you into a new phase of your relationship. And I also think that if you are one who is committed to your spousal partnership and you want that to endure, then there's going to be karmic situations that come up in those kinds of relationships. But of course, when we're talking about really, really intense karma, then you could eventually part, or you just may have a really powerful challenge to move through together. Excuse me 1 second. Okay, so how do you know that you're experiencing a karmic friendship or karmic relationship of some kind? Well, I guess it wouldn't be any surprise to say that often it's really challenging and really tumultuous. And so I have some examples, different shades of karmic friendships and relationships. One is the lifelong friendship, the one that you probably became friends when you were very young, and then it's continuing, and really this person is your best friend and maybe becomes more like a sibling to you in a really powerful sense. It's the family that you choose. And then things start to get more difficult along the way. Now, I don't know about you guys, but growing up, from probably 4 to 18, my best friendships, we always have typical knockdown, drag out fight. Not literally, we didn't beat each other, but we would have really powerful fights the way that you would have with your partners, you know what I mean? Because I think that those best friendships that we have when we're young, they are partnerships when we aren't really comfortable, where we're not, mentally or maybe even physically mature enough to handle an actual romantic partnership, that kind of life partnership. It's a different kind of life partnership where we're working on that emotional component. And so that lifelong friendship, there probably will be, there will be some karmic situations, because again, this is like the family that you choose. But I have a few, like the girls who were on my show on this last episode, and they were talking about their karmic ex-best friends. And so one of my friends that was in that dream, we were best friends for about probably a year and a half or 2 years during adulthood. And it was a really, really close friendship. We spent so much time together, so much so that we had Sunday set apart for one another as a special day. We're like, seriously, we were in our late 20s, and it was kind of funny. And we would laugh at ourselves because that's what partners do. That's what like boyfriends and girlfriends do, or husbands and wives and spouses do. But we set Sundays aside together because we were busy, but we just needed to spend time together. And we really aren't that close anymore. Our friendship now has become like the Facebook friendship and the checking in, and it just dwindled off. We were in each other's weddings, and it really, nothing happened except that we grew, and we just changed. Our paths just shifted in a way. It was gradual. Nobody's heart was broken, but it is very karmic, because the work that we did together when we were together was really important. And then also allowing ourselves to drift apart, I think, was an important part for each of us on our paths. And even though it's a more subtle way that we experienced karma, we did. And so that's why she was in that dream. She was actually there just holding space. And I feel like that's what we're doing in one another's lives now. We're still a part of one another's lives in the heart, because the real love the true unconditional love that you form with someone in a bond can't go anywhere. It literally changes your soul forever, and you exist as a part of one another forever. So that's one kind. And then another kind of friendship, that lifelong one, I have a couple of friends who've had similar situations where you're really, really close, you're like sisters, and then just some really difficult things happen to where you just can't even talk anymore, where one person feels like they're being rejected or they're being hurt really badly. In my particular situation, it was the way that we were both experiencing our spiritual growth is what just came into the center of the relationship. And I think we just started to move apart. Well, we had some powerful like breakup times. It's really sad. And it's not as though this person it's off limits to speak with them, but we used to be like siblings, and now we text once per year, but it was really painful. And in one of our breakups, because our friendship started when we were very young, actually started when we were 14 years old. And I realized in this moment, and I even said in this conversation, I said, I feel like we're being the 14-year-old versions of ourselves right now. And as I said it, it's almost like I didn't say it. It was like I was channeling it, and it struck me. And I was like, oh, we're still moving through the pain that we had when we were 14, individually, but with each other. And that's the reason that we were attracted to one another, was the pain. Not the only reason. It was also, the ridiculous senses of humor and, all of the fun too. So those ex-best friendships, I have two other really close friends who have the same kind of thing, where they were friends from the time they were children, maybe teenagers, and then sometime in like the 30s or something, somehow it fell apart, and there had to be even a breakup. And so it's painful. And so, but they're not always tumultuous like that other friend that I mentioned, where we just grew apart. But it's still, there were such powerful lessons to learn. It just unfolded in a really slow way, in a really subtle way. Another karmic relationship that I experienced is pretty common. This one may or may not seem like a friendship, but it's when we have, if you're a person who has bosses, some people are, they're entrepreneurs who never have bosses. But when you have a boss that just rubs you the wrong MFing way. Or maybe even a colleague. So let's say boss or colleague, because there are colleagues. I know a friend of mine recently changed her name on Facebook because a colleague was giving her so much trouble, a coworker. And so, that's a problem. If the coworker is tormenting you enough that you actually want to hide in real life, well, not real life, Facebook life, but still, so I had a boss. The job that I had before I went independent into my intuitive career. And it was like I had this job for 7.5 years. And when I first got the job, and actually the whole time, for the most part, this person was my greatest ally, was really the reason why, a big part of the reason why I had the job. But the way that he functioned was so heavy-handed. This is my perspective. This is not me creating judgment. It was in sales. So he was such a sales beast, and it had a totally different perspective the way that I approach business. And he was more about like that kind of athletic, win no matter what at any cost. And to me, I'm just like, no, let's help people grow at any cost. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I'm like. And that just doesn't work when you're just looking at hard, cold sales. And so we were like oil and water from my perspective. And actually, I think from his as well, although he didn't think about me probably nearly as much as I thought about him, but he didn't know how to be around me. He always just thought of me as this artsy person. And he's like, yeah, sure. That's what people want, but I don't get it. You know what I mean? And I would hardly ever see this. This job was really pretty cool because I would hardly ever interact with this person. He was my direct boss. I would only interact with him a few times per year, but I went to bed every night praying away my anxiety about this person. And that's, in a way that seems like neurosis because, like I said, I don't really have to deal with this person. But it was me being able to understand, and I had some really powerful growth because there were a couple of times where I did have an interaction with him, and he would just kind of like clobber all of my intentions and just like force something into my schedule, force something on me, some work to do that I didn't even have the talent to do or skill set. And I would get so angry about how I was being disrespected and disregarded. But there was this one time when I was so angry about it and I was like, whoa, that kind of anger, I'm not taking any responsibility for this. And so I was realizing, wow, this is really truly a karmic relationship for me to have this kind of powerful response to someone truly doing his job. He really was doing his job objectively. And so I was actually driving along the road, realizing how angry I was at him. And I was like, hold on a second. I need to look into this. And I was like, so what are the ways that I'm blaming him? What is my judgment of him? And I said, well, he should respect me more. And I said, he should have more respect for my schedule and for what it is I'm good at doing and not ask me to do things that are too difficult for me. The reason I'm laying those out for you is because the truth is, those are all in the work of Byron Katie. We learned this. I turn those around. And the truth is, that's what I need to say to myself. I need to respect myself more. I need to respect what I'm more talented at and put that out in the world. And I need to not give myself things that are outside of the scope of what makes me happy and joyful, And so as I felt those things and I let those really set in with my truth about me, suddenly I realized this has nothing to do with him at all. And then I did see objectively, he's doing his job. So I actually drove and I went to the office and I went into meditation, and what I actually did, another tip I have for you to how to move through this stuff, is I did a ho'oponopono, which is a Hawaiian huna prayer and spiritual technique. So I don't want to claim it at all because I'm not of that culture. But it's essentially, you could look it up, it's essentially being in that altered state and unconditional objective and saying, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. But in a way where you really spend time with the energy of that person and really spend time with those statements. And I actually like to do, instead of please forgive me, I'll also do I forgive you, which is another way to move into each of those. And so I did that. And as I only had like 10 minutes before this horrible thing that he was making me do was about to start, I came up out of that meditation and I got a little blip on my phone saying, a little notification. And I looked at it and it said that he had canceled the meeting. And it was like so shocking to me how direct clearing that karma affected it could have been that I just went ahead and did it with the right head instead, but it actually just went away. How powerful it is when you clear that karma. And so clearing karma doesn't mean that it means that you have to do the work and you have to go sit with it and be with it. So a couple of other kinds of relationships that would be that are those karmic kinds, sometimes those really, really passionate lovers that are also really short-lived, It just comes in like, people tend to call these, twin flames or something like that. And that if that twin flame experience makes sense to you, then I would say, well, there's definitely karma there, right? But there are times, we've probably all had them, where there's this really powerful relationship that just doesn't work out, but you still think about that person. Not in a way that you're hung up on them, but every now and again you're like, wow, gosh, I could almost forget that person's name, but I remember that powerful energy that we had in one another's life. And I think part of the reason we have those, one reason we could have that just experience is because we want to learn how to move through something that is heartbreak. You know what I mean? Like you weren't really meant to be partners, but you have something strong and it makes you brave. If I can survive this, then I can go on to my partnership that's going to be one that's more long-lasting or lifelong if that's on your path. And I won't be afraid of losing because I know I can make it through. So I'll be myself when I have this partnership because I know that's the most important thing. And if that somehow makes us move apart, I will survive because I survived this hot, passionate one that's I thought for a moment was going to be the one. There are also minor karmic relationships. And so I had one in the last few years, and this was a person that I worked with who was so powerful in my life, but then all of a sudden it started to fall apart in a way that was really surprising to me from my perspective. This person, it was a working relationship, but this person just essentially stopped having any integrity. And it was surprising because we had been working together a couple of years, and I just didn't understand why all of a sudden there was no integrity anymore. And I was really being taken advantage of. And so at the end where that karma started to come in, it was for me to be able to move away from, to grow through a relationship that was important to me and was very, very useful, but to maintain that's what is more important is my growth. And so I had to let that one go in a way that was a minor relationship, as it concerns the whole life. But it was a really powerful experience for me. There's also one-sided karma where maybe one person in the relationship is sort of just like holding space while the other person is learning something. But the person who's the one who's holding space, that is their part of the karma. But it kind of seems like, there's something more dynamic happening for the other person. And I'll give you an example. I had this short-term relationship. It was for a few months. It was actually a professional relationship. And this person is an evangelical Christian. And that's lovely, right? Great and everything. But what with the kind of dogma and everything that tends to go with it, this particular person was. And so this person had the opportunity in their relationship with me by asking me what I did and all that kind of stuff. And I explained it to him. He had the opportunity to not judge me and he didn't at all. And not only that, but we had really interesting conversations about spiritual topics, and sometimes they would include the Bible because I have been a Bible scholar in my life, and I guess I would still consider myself that. And so it was an opportunity for him to have his own experience of a relationship free of what would be something that is an outside authority that would tell him that what I'm doing is evil. That's what it felt like to me. And I didn't feel him get scared even once when we talked about anything that I did, because he was and so I also, but on my side as well, I didn't judge him for the things that he would say that, where he was growing a little bit and they were a little bit, dogmatic and stuff. I just let him have his experience. So in a way, though, it was kind of like I could see it, and I'm also much older than this person, but it was a little bit one-sided in that he had more of an opportunity than I did. And so this one particular, there's one where, like I mentioned, there could be a famous person, or there could be a person that you don't know, but you consider in a way a mentor, someone you look up to. And then if something shifts in their experience, then that could make you feel like something is pain, like, there's something painful about how you looked at them before. Because when you looked at them in a way that you admired them, you were actually admiring an aspect of yourself. And so that's why it becomes really karmic in your experience. And an example I have of this is Doreen Virtue. And it was a couple of episodes ago, 2-3 episodes ago, when Mika Cooper was on, we spoke about this briefly, because Mika is a medium, and she actually had part of her education early on was with Doreen Virtue. So Doreen Virtue, if you don't know, is a formerly an author and teacher and person in media in what she calls New Age. Now I don't think she called it New Age when she was doing that career, but she had a conversion about 2 years ago to evangelical Christianity, and now effectively renounces all of that work that she did before. And several episodes ago with Crystal Anne Compton, we went through this list where she put out this article saying that if you are doing oracle cards or you're doing mediumship or anything like that, Christians shouldn't do this because it means you're working with Satan or you're going to hell and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of where she is. And so when and this is just where she is on her spiritual path. This is absolutely no judgment at all. Everyone is moving through their path. I used to be on the path in that particular way, so of course I can't judge her. That's exactly where I was at one point. I'm in a different place myself. But there were people who took her classes that she's now renouncing and bought her cards that she's now renouncing and looked up to her as someone, and and then they had their real spiritual experiences by seeing her as a mentor, either by buying her books or actually taking her classes. And then they were suddenly either frightened or confused. And it, to them, a lot of these people seemed like she changed the contract of their relationship. And their hearts were broken because it's like she broke up with them even if she didn't know them. You know what I mean? Like the ways that she was encouraging them, she was now renouncing. And again, she's perfectly right to do. And that is her belief now. That's where she is. So it's logical. But the people that experienced that, because some of them were my students, I told them it was an opportunity for them to own their spirituality or their business or whatever it may be outside of their mentor. And that doesn't mean that their mentor and the time that they spent with her as a mentor is something to be thrown out. That was genuine and real. But most importantly, when you had that experience, it was the growth that you did in your relationship with her. So these things, I'm sure it can happen when people like just admire celebrities and then they find out they're cheating on their spouse and then their heart is broken. Things like that can happen. That doesn't really happen to me, but something else that can provoke karma in general is disease, particularly alcoholism or substance abuse. That can kind of instantly start creating karma. And so I have a couple of friendships where there was some kind of addiction or alcoholism, and it shifted the friendship. But then when they got into recovery, then a whole new part of our relationship started, and that was really beautiful. But if you want to see some instant karma, start an addiction. It'll just start in your life. Tony Sweet is actually producing my show today. How much time do I have? I don't know. I don't see the timer on the thing. Oh, cool. Okay, thank you so much. All right, I still got a few minutes with you guys. All right, so now the important thing to know is that there is always a lesson in these relationships. If you are feeling, the worst thing that you can do is to become a victim. Because when you become a victim, now in the moment that you experience victimhood, and it could be real, someone is treating you poorly and inappropriately or even abusing you, That's true. I'm not saying that there's no such thing as being a victim, but the way that you start to move through it is then to take responsibility and find out where you are in that. So we are multidimensional, right? So there is this dimension of the human level. Like I said earlier, only humans punish one another. So there is that human aspect where it's true. You are a victim, and other times when you've been the aggressor, but we want to move through it and bring it up to the soul level. So on the soul level, you'll know you're more on that soul level if you aren't proud of your victimhood, or if you are able to start moving out of the blame and the shame and the regret and the judgment. When we're there, we're still on that human level. And we want to include the higher levels. We don't actually move away from the human level. We include the higher levels of ourselves, the higher dimensions of ourselves. That's where we're going to be able to do the work. So if the wrong thing to do is what I was doing when I was talking about that boss, is to say, I'm a victim, they do this to me, and it's bad. And then, by the way, if you choose to run away during that, then you're probably just that frequency still exists within you. You're still sending out that signal. And so it's going to come back to you as an offering for you to move through it. So might as well do it with the one that's right here, right now, right? It's a shorter cut. So moving on before that shadow frequency has had your full awareness, that's just going to cause it to return again. That's our patterning. We say, I have a pattern. Oh, I'm repeating. Oh, I'm dating the same asshole. You know what I mean? Like over and over. And so we want to spend time with it when we feel that difficulty, and it's all about you. So the person is there to be a representation, to be a figure of what actually is happening within you. And so this is what we can do, is to turn it back into the self. And actually, before I give you the couple of ways to navigate the emotions, I want to just talk about one more thing, which is, surprise, this is a karmic relationship. So we can have relationships that are going on for a while and they are just lovely and they're fun, and maybe we work together and maybe there's challenges and there's different things to navigate, but then boom, all of a sudden it seems to you that the contract has changed and this person is now behaving in a way that is different. Like the one that I said with the person who was a colleague for 2 years, a beautiful swimming relationship. And then all of a sudden I feel as though this person has moved out of integrity and he's even taken advantage of me in business. Boom, surprise, I have a karmic relationship. So things can be going along for months, years, and then all of a sudden that relationship becomes challenging and difficult. So there sometimes are surprise karmic relationships. Again, you could potentially move through this, or it could be that it's time to end that contract, but you don't want to end that contract, or you can end that contract with that person, but you don't want to leave it completely unless or until you do the full personal work within. I have a friend who has a friend, and they were working together for, they're friends, but as well as colleagues, and working together for a while, and then suddenly there was this shift in the other person's perspective to a point where it made them angry at the work that they had been creating together, and it was really confusing. Suddenly it was a karmic relationship where my friend, who I was closest to, needed to stand up for what she believed in and move on from the relationship. And that one actually did end in some pain. And just, unfortunately, it does end in pain sometimes. And that we have to say goodbye to something that was something we loved before. So some ways to actually navigate the emotions is to do your work. That's the one thing I want you to take away from here, is do your work. I mean your inner work. And if you are experiencing difficulty and pain and discomfort, there is work for you to do. Now, there may be stuff for the other person to do, but that's not your business. You do your work, you will naturally move either away from, or you will hold a frequency that will offer them a new work. So that's why, Jesus told me to show who I was, and that would also be simultaneously showing my boundaries, meaning this is what a friendship is for me. So meditation, and in just a general meditation, you go deep, get altered, and then sit with the discomfort until you understand how you can take responsibility for it. That's just one way that, what does this feel like? And what does that look like? And what does that feel like? And anytime you feel that you want to run away from it, just know that that's an opportunity to stay longer. And the longer that you stay, the better you feel, though, when you're in the uncomfortable shadow aspects. It's not about re-traumatizing yourself. It's about releasing the trauma that was already there. That ho'oponopono, you can just look up those 4 phrases, and it's spelled H-O''O''O''O''. O-P-O-N-O. You can look up those 4 phrases, and you take those into meditation with the other person and allow your heart to open to them and hold those in your awareness with them, and really and truly say, I forgive you, or please forgive me, until you really mean it in all of the different ways. The work of Byron Katie is a really helpful tool. It's called The Work. She has a book called Loving What Is. And she has a system that she calls inquiry, and allows us something similar to what I'm saying about the ho'oponopono, or sitting with it until the ick goes away. And it allows you to move through like a kind of questionnaire and turn those statements around so that you can see what your part in it is. And what you do when they do end, when those karmic relationships end. Really, what's important is to keep what was good in the relationship. Just because this relationship ended in hurt and pain, and maybe you were betrayed, the times that you were together and you loved one another and you supported one another, or you admired one another, that's real. It doesn't mean, the world isn't binary, black or white, off or on, good or bad. If that teacher served you before, that still exists. And your part of it as being the one who did the work, the good work in that part of the relationship, is still true. And so the good memories can stay, and the good feelings can stay. You don't have to then go in to say, well, then I must have been a fool for falling in love with this person, or for being best friends with this person. I must have been stupid. It's not true. That was real as well. So there's no need to throw out the baby with the bathwater. All the good is true too. And if you did that, if you tried to throw away what was good, you would actually be denying your own growth and your own truth about the relationship. It's important to mourn when these relationships end. Really just feel it deeply. Feel the loss. And it may be important to mourn many times. You know, if it's one of those lifelong relationships of some kind, there may be times that you want to go and look at the photos and weep. And that's okay, because those really powerful relationships, those roots are deep. And if you can cry those tears that need to be cried, either again or in a different kind of deluge, it's important. It's an important kind of catharsis that will allow that relationship and all of the good parts to integrate into your tapestry more fully. And you don't have to feel bad if you have hope that the relationship will come back again. Again, allow that hope to be there in an unblemished way, not in a way that you're hanging on to something, or, something is, you aren't letting yourself grow. But if you have some hope, because that's just attached to all of the good, that's okay. And the way you can manage that hope in a way that's balanced, I think, is to stay really present, not to regret, and maybe pray for the person. Take that moment when you hope, you wish that you had that love again. Just pray and just send them so many blessings, and find a deep state of gratitude for I'm going to cry, the time that you had together, because that's what's calling you. That's the beauty, that's the light that is calling you into full integration about this relationship. And that is expanding the karma into something that is powerful and strong for you. And I'll just leave you again as I sign off here. I talk a lot about the seed. You know what I mean? Like we are nature, and so as a seed, we are like a seed in the soil to ourselves. We have this code inside of us, this soul information, this non-physical information, which is the truth of our soul. But when that expands, then it breaks the shell. And so that's what we do too. That shell maybe can feel a little bit karmic sometimes, because if it's still there and it's tight, but our soul has to expand, then we'll leave behind parts of that shell to the ecosystem. And it's an offering. It's an offering to the ecosystem. If we have to leave behind a relationship, it's because our soul is expanding if we allow it to. So again, maybe I'm mourning a little bit. Allow yourself to do that catharsis, but more importantly, do your work. Allow yourself to grow. I believe in you. I know you can do it. If I can do it, you can do it. And call someone who can just hold space for you if that's necessary. And with that, I will sign off and say thank you so much for joining me. Thanks for tuning in. I love you, whoever you are.